Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for stopping by. So today's video is quite a personal one in terms of quite important subject in regards to my photography really. I started bird photography on this tiny island of Okinawa, which is a Japanese island, and I started photography 15 years ago. Now, I started photography and then very quickly got into bird photography. And initially I was just photographing birds near the house, egrets, blue rock thrushes, common birds here in Okinawa. But if you're interested in birds and you live in Okinawa, it's only a matter of time before you decide to head up to the very north of the island, to the jungles where not many people live, to the area called Yanbaru Kuina, which is the geographical name. There you have three different endemic birds, which are the iconic species that you find here in Okinawa. And I've been bird guiding for over 10 years here in Okinawa, and those are the three species that all the visiting birders from around the world want to see. But one bird in particular, the Okinawan Rail, or the Yanbaru Kuina, as it's known here in Okinawa, is that particular iconic bird that everybody really wants to see. It's the first bird that visitors to Okinawa want to see. Now, it's also the symbol of Yanbaru. Like, if you buy any souvenirs of Okinawa, they'll often have an Okinawan Rail on them. As I said, I started photographing 15 years ago, and in that time, its status seems to have changed from critically endangered to critically endangered to endangered. Now, I'm not sure what the current numbers are, but from my point of view, when I started photographing or looking for them 15 years ago, I seemed to find them really easily without much effort at all. And in my experience, I find them a lot more difficult when I look these days. Now, at the moment, it's April, May. That's the easiest time of the year to see them because they're breeding and they're raising baby Okinawan rails. So the parents are out hunting all the time. So most years, April and May, you can see them. But in my experience, in winter time these days, it takes a bit more effort to find them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers have come down. It sometimes means, for whatever reason, the birds have slightly relocated, either up into the mountains, which are not so easily accessible. They often like to feed on the roads because after the rains come, the bugs come out, and on the roads, those bugs are easier to find than deep in the forest. And that is the one place where people often see the rail. They'll drive around the corner and the rail that was feeding on the road then suddenly bursts into the undergrowth on the side of the road, and people will get to see the back of the bird disappearing into the foliage. Now, these birds have very small wings, so they are flightless. They're the only flightless bird in Japan. And as a result, they are kind of interesting. I was going to say charismatic, but not particularly charismatic. They're kind of unusual. When they run, they look completely top heavy and sometimes look as if they're going to fall over. They often flap their wings and dry their wings, but in terms of flying, they are completely useless. Now, this bird's superpower, however, is the fact that it can climb trees incredibly well. And at night, due to the few predators that exist here, namely the venomous snake, the habu, the Okinawan pit viper we have here, they will scale trees where the snake can't get to. And these trees, sometimes they can go up as high as 7 or 8 meters in the air up these trees at nighttime. And sometimes these trees don't have any visible branches, so how they do it, I have no idea. They're basically climbing up a sheer vertical without any obvious branches. So how they do it, I don't know, but I've seen them climb sheer hills at high speed with no problem at all. So they are incredibly good climbers. They usually spend the night up in the tree unless the female is on eggs or looking after the young, and then they will build a nest somewhere in some deep foliage on the ground. But most of the year, they are up in the tree, usually on their own. You can get very lucky and see two in the same tree at once, but usually they are on their own. In many ways, this is an extremely interesting bird. It was only actually officially registered in 1981 in terms of it was then entered into bird books. The locals had known about it for years, obviously. They'd seen it, farmers up there had seen it. But because the island was so underbirded, it wasn't officially recognised, I think, till 1979, and then it officially got its name and everything in 1981. So it's a relatively new bird. It seems remarkable, really, that people weren't aware of this bird until that recently. But now, as I said, there's road signs and signposts of it everywhere, But actually, you're far more likely to see a sign of an Okinawan rail than you are to see the bird itself. And all my Okinawan family here, they have never seen one. They think there's some kind of mythical character that almost don't exist. But if you're actually a bird watcher and you know where to look and you know where to find them, you can find them relatively easy if you know the places to look. So as I said, they breed between end of March and the beginning of June. The mothers usually give birth to about 2, 3 or 4 individuals. And what's really surprising is they grow up so fast. I've seen juveniles run across the road like their parent at maybe as young as 10 days old. And within about 2 or 3 months, they look almost identical to the adults. So they grow up very, very fast and then they're out on their own. They don't have many natural predators. As I said, the snakes are one, but unfortunately the other major risks to the bird are all human related. One, roadkill. That is a big problem when they get hit on the road by people speeding or people not seeing the bird. Two, the snake, of course, as I said, they will often try to get the eggs or try and attack juveniles. Feral cats and sometimes feral dogs are a problem. Sometimes dogs are released up into Yanbaru and they mate, and then I have been up there on a number of occasions and seen groups of 7 or 8 feral dogs running around, and they'll eat anything they can. Feral cats is a big problem. Feral cats will take anything. They'll take a lot of local birds, not only the Okinawan Rail, but barred button quail, white-breasted waterhen, lots of ground-dwelling birds they will take. And the last big problem is after the First World War, there was an issue with lots of local people in the farms being bitten by the poisonous snakes here. And due to lack of medicine, a lot of people died. So someone came up with a great idea to introduce the Indian mongoose to get rid of the snakes. The problem was snakes are nocturnal, mongooses aren't. So they don't often meet each other. What happens is the mongoose have devastated the birds, and you see mongoose traps all over North Okinawa, and you often see vans with mongoose signs on the side of them going around to check these mongoose traps and trying to cull them. But mongooses breed so much, and the number of mongooses I see now in comparison to 15 years ago has grown massively in contrast to the amount of Okinawan rails that I see. So that is clearly still a big issue. Anyway, I'm not going to go into big detail about the rail today. I just thought recently it was kind of interesting because it has been 15 years since I started bird photography, and I was looking at some old pictures of mine of the Okinawan Rail, and it was interesting to see the contrast between the pictures I'm taking now, and that is reflected in my photography in general. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a million photos of the Okinawan Rail, so I can't show you all of them, but what I'll do is I'll show you a few photos I like, and I might talk about 2 or 3 in a bit more detail, just to say why I like them. I think it's always fun to go back and look at your old photos to see how your photography has developed. And when I look at the shots I took of the rail 15 years ago and the shots I get now, there's such a big difference. And it's interesting to reminisce, but it's also pleasing to know how my photography has developed. In those olden days, I was just happy to get any shot. In fact, I think in those early days I was shooting in JPEG, and I would often get quite close to the rail just by chance really, and I'd shoot out of the car, shoot from an angle looking down, and I was just happy to get any shot. As time's gone on, I've got a bit more discerning, I've got a bit more careful about the kind of shot I want, and so if the bird isn't in the right environment, I'll often drive past and look for another bird. But often the birds are, as I said, running off the road, or they're deep in amongst the leaves and the brush, so it's very difficult to get a clear shot. They're often not out in the open because they are very aware of cars and humans. Doesn't mean you can't get close. I have on a number of times got close to birds preening on the side of the road, but usually once they hear or see a car, they are gone. So I really hope you enjoy the photos. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new here, please subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and thanks so much for watching. Bye. So these are just some of the thousands of photos I've taken of the rail over the last 15 years. No particular reason why I chose them, more to do with what I could find while making the video. I often make videos and then a week later I find pictures that I should have included, and that would probably be the case here too. Looking back at this video now, just before I share it, I see some photos that don't quite look how I remember them, and they probably need to be re-edited or replaced with another shot. But it's too late now, so they will have to do. I hope you don't mind looking at loads of photos of the same subject. Something I want to stress is that this is an endangered bird, a significant and important bird, and I always try to think of the welfare of the bird when photographing them. I've spent so much time with them over the years, I feel very comfortable with their expectations and tolerances of humans and cars, as much as my expectations of them. Many times I drive the 2 hours to see them and they don't appear. I learned a long time ago that this is fine and there is always another time and for this I realise I am very lucky. I am also acutely aware of the habitat which they can be found in, and it's also shared with Okinawans that have lived and worked in these places for generations, and as such empathy and respect for these people is paramount. I was reluctant sharing video of possible locations as I don't want these places to be inundated with tourists or bird watchers, but totally expect not many people will see this video anyway, especially not people living in Okinawa. Anyway, I feel the video is adequately discreet. So I have chosen 4 photos which I particularly like. I spent years accepting that the bird was elusive, and if I should get lucky and see it, I would just grab a shot and be happy. These were often shots of the bird surrounded and covered by vegetation. If one goes online, 95% of shots of this bird are cluttered with some of the bird covered by vegetation. I made a conscious effort a few years ago to endeavour to get better shots, and if that meant getting nothing at all, that's absolutely fine. So this first shot was the first shot of this bird that I got that I really felt stood out, that was different to what else was out there. Because of their behaviour and them always being close to a rapid escape, they are rarely out in the open, where an unobstructed shot is possible. I had anticipated this bird coming towards me and got as low as I could. I was leaning right out of my car window, holding my camera and lens as low as I could. Very precarious, could have easily dropped it. I loved the pose and the surrounding element. I was happy with this one. So I have many shots of this bird running, as this is what they seem to spend most of their life doing. I had wanted to get a juvenile running for a while, but in this shot, I believe this bird is only about 2 or 3 weeks old. They develop really quickly, and I had set my cart in an area where I thought a mother with 2 babies was. Without really being certain they were there and not being sure they could walk, I was amazed when this one followed its mother with exactly the same running style as its mum. I was so happy to get this shot, and unobstructed too. This third shot I really like, as I was envisaging how I would edit it as I was taking it. When they look at you head on, they can look somewhat demonic, the Okinawan Rail, and their call is frankly pretty terrifying. I underexposed this shot and knew I would darken it some more in post. I really like this shot. Finally, I got really lucky with this one, when I tried an area where I thought a pair might roost. I had been there twice before, but only found one bird in a tree on both occasions. But on the third time, I got these 2. I have seen 2 in a tree a few times before, but by the time I'm out of the car, one or both are gone. They're obviously more careful as a pair. I've never had a single bird do a runner. That's it. If you're still here, thanks so much for sticking with it. Next week, I'll be conducting a 100-question quiz on the Okinawan Rail. I expect everyone to get top marks. See ya!